Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Nedling, and I'm coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of our podcast is for us to share topics and guests that will empower you to grow as a confident leader and take your business or your life to the next level. Today, my guest is Tigrilla Gardenia. And every time I say her name, I think of my flowers outside. And when you see her face, you see she is just like this beautiful flower. So it's a perfect name for her. We could probably just talk about the origin of everything. But let me just tell you a little bit about her. Her journey began in a polyethnic childhood, and she earned a degree in music and electrical engineering. Oh, right, and left brain, just like my husband. Entered high tech via RealNetworks and Microsoft. And she had, in those early days, that desire to escape the corporate world. Been there, done that. That desire became so strong that she soon began to follow her spiritual path. She co-owned a circus, produced intentional dance events, taught Kabbalah, and even toured with the Cirque du Soleil, one of my favorite things to see. Today, she is as a nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach, and she's focused on plant intelligence, the effects of plant music on human health, social innovation, and ecosystem thinking. She has the honor of being a Damanhur citizen in Italy, once the largest spiritual eco communities in the world, and her roots are firmly planted in the arts, communication, and avant-garde. She uses expertise to empower creatives, healers, and entrepreneurs who love to return to nature, to take action with confidence, to become conscious leaders of their lives. She's a speaker, a teacher. She has a master's degree in vegetal future, plants, social innovation, design under Stefano Mancuso, and in the University of Florence. Please join me in welcoming Tigrilla Gardenia, and we're going to talk today about what plants can teach humans about leadership. So welcome, Tigrilla. This is going to be so interesting. I could not wait to get you on.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
So first question, always easy icebreaker to get us going here. What part of the country do you now call home?
I wish it was easy, but it's actually kind of, it's not complex. It's fun. So I live in the north of Italy, as you said, in one of the largest spiritual eco communities in the world, which is called Damanhur, or as I lovingly call it, Hogwarts for adults. So I'm about 45 minutes outside of Turin and about an hour and a half outside of Milan.
Nice.
At the foothills of the Alps.
Been there. Beautiful, beautiful area. So my first question, we talked about all of these things that you're into, and our topic is, how can plants teach humans leadership? So do plants and humans react in the same way when there is a crisis?
Well, today, the way human beings tend to react is when there's a crisis, when there's a situation, we kind of react from a place of fear. We react from a place of kind of coveting what is. So when there's something that happens, my first instinct is to take it to the status quo. Where was I and how do I get back to where I am? Where plants instead, from what we know about their behavior and when we look at exactly how they create ecosystems, tend to see a crisis as an opportunity. So it's a very different way of looking at it, where a plant will look and first start to see, okay, is this a situation of a crisis that involves some kind of major damage? And if so, before I decide what to do, I am going to evaluate the situation. So plants have many more senses than we as humans have. So we as humans tend to rely on our 5 main senses, where plants have about another 15 beyond that. So about 20 total. And this allows them to very finely tune, with a very finely tuned a measurement, understand what's happening around them. So even the word crisis implies something that's going wrong, where for plants, they'll look at it as what has changed from the way things normally operate. What are the feedback loops that I've put in place and what are they giving me? So I have expected behavior that's not happening. I have feedback loops that give me an understanding of what's happening and that I can read. And then they can look and say, how do I adapt to this changed condition? So one of kind of nature's laws, you might say, is to adapt to changing conditions. And so it's a huge shift, which is not to say that we as humans don't have the ability to do that, but we oftentimes in a crisis don't give ourselves permission to step into our own natural intelligence and do these steps that in some ways that are really innate to who we are.
And we don't like to do it either. We don't like change.
No, and that's exactly it. It's very interesting to think that we tend to say we want change, things need to change and whatever, but it's actually not true. Oftentimes what we want is, even if something is going badly, I prefer the bad that I know rather than what might be. Where from a plant's perspective, there isn't this need for the continuity to be in that way. If there is a situation or if there is a new opportunity that comes into a change in the system, then it's looked at as, what can I get out of it? How can I grow from it? How can I improve? And it's been shown time and time again that plants actually grow based on this. Like, this is how we have the colors of flowers. It's all about testing because something has gone wrong, and okay, wait a minute, let me test another color, or let me test another scent, or let me test another nectar combination. All of these types of things are responses to crisis.
Oh my goodness, that is crazy. So whenever we talk about this, is there some direct correlation in, as a human, you talked about pivoting, you talked about change and adaptability. How hard is it for us to kind of go outside of that comfort zone, outside of that known, and be able to accept the unknown?
Yeah, this is really difficult, especially because the way that we have been taught to deal with stuff is to very quickly look for a solution. So a situation happens, a crisis happens, a change in the overall system, and rather than seeing it for what it really is, like, and taking that, not just that time, but also letting it sort of sit in and going, okay, what is the impact of it? We often say we have this kind of what we think is human cleverness. And the cleverness is, let me go to the solution first, without even fully assessing everything that happened. So this is kind of been taught. It's not necessarily actually a natural part of ourselves. It's more of a taught behavior that we are continuously perpetuating because of that fear of change. Inherently, when you go into the human being and you start to really talks and understand, you get down to the fact of there's an underlying fear. And the fear is in the fear of the change of the status quo, the fear of the unknown. We as humans have not been taught to embrace the unknown. In reality, we grow up knowing, and we are constantly kind of told that we're supposed to stay one step ahead. We're supposed to know what's coming next. We're supposed to know that if I do A, I get B, I get B. If I move in this way, this is what happens. So if I take this job, this is my promotional ladder. If I do this work as an entrepreneur, this is the reward that's going to come. If I wear this type of clothes, this is the type of response I'm going to go. If I, we're not used to the idea of, even if you think about the way we cook, we've based everything back on recipes. I hear these steps and this is what I get out of it. Instead of the whole traditional, let me just experiment and see what happens and be okay. Now imagine when that's something that has major consequences. So we see this a lot in business. Most businesses, their major divisions are not able to really innovate. So what they do is they create secondary small businesses or small departments where they say, I'm going to throw money at you and you can just do whatever you want. And that's where the real innovation comes from. Let me experiment in every play. In a natural setting, this happens all the time. There is very few things that are sort of safe, sacrilege, like you don't change them, because if you don't change, you don't evolve. And that is the number one goal of nature, is to continuously evolve.
Oh, so true. So many things just came to my mind. One, when you were talking about the fact that that plants are okay with taking time to assess. And in this world, especially that we're living in now, everybody wants everything now. And they try to, as you said, just go straight to that solution. And the other piece that was interesting, I was thinking of kids when they're just toddlers. They are fine taking their good old time with one thing, trying to figure it out. Right. And now I wonder how the kids in this digital age, my 3-year-old grandson who can use my phone as good as I can and maybe better, what is going to be needed to instill in them this creative and this ability to take their time?
Yeah, this is a big topic of conversation in the sort of nature-inspired and nature-based world, because we believe that there's something called nature deficit disorder, and many of our children are suffering from this. And yes, there's a large part of that it's the movement of your body, the going outside, the spending time, in nature for all of its health benefits and all of its physical benefits. But there's also the mental and emotional benefits that come from exactly that, the slower mentality, the fact that seasons take time to change, flowers take time to bloom. How many of us even grew up experiencing those very slow changes that happen in nature, going out every day. Even myself, right behind, right now, my computer, I have a row of plants, and these plants are kind of some of them are my business partners, some of them are just my friends. And I love taking the time of every day, seeing how they change. It reminds me in my own business and in my own leadership to invest in the people that work with me, to take the time to let my clients speak their truth, to get to their truth. It reminds me of all of those processes that take time to explore. And so as our children are lacking that vitamin N, that vitamin nature, they are losing. That's why we're seeing more temper tantrums and why we're seeing more instant gratification need and all these different aspects, because that contact with their kind of true nature, with nature outside of yourself, connected to the nature inside, means that they're losing that connection to natural processes and cycles. And we see it in business. We see it, the boss that comes in and says, I need an answer now. And it's like, that's not really possible.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah. As I do project management, I'm on a project right now as a consultant, and I want these people to think outside of the box 24/7, and it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And that's where the plants can really help us to remember what are some of the natural cycles that have to happen. The relationship with the seasons, which also affect our own bodies. I know businesses that have changed the way that they work by stepping into a more natural rhythm. You know, when it gets really hot out in the middle of summer, why is it that certain countries used to take siesta? They took siesta because your body naturally slows down. Your processes mainly slow down. And so taking that time in the middle of the day was really helpful. In the winter, there's a hibernation. There's a great opportunity for reviewing what has been coming in. What have you done to be able to process that, understand it, and then get ready, put everything in place so that in the spring you can start up again. Exactly. And so when we start to really connect and look at the way that plants plan from, you know, seed all the way to full maturity, to when they start producing seeds, to all these different pieces, helps us better understand our rhythms. And in reality, we tend to be more efficient then. Because when we're running, we trip, we make mistakes, we skip things, we do things, and that kind of continuously sets us back. When we take that time and we go through those steps, even if you go through those steps rather quickly, but at least you go through them and you consciously go through them, you find yourself being much more efficient. And over time, the process has a bigger return on investment.
Also, very interesting. It makes perfect sense to me. My goodness. You know, we talked about business, but how can plants teach us to have healthy relationships?
This is one of my favorite stories. So most of us don't realize, because again, if we go outside, you rarely see a plant growing by themselves. Right? Even if you have a tree, that single right outside my window, have a huge, beautiful silver fir, but around there's grasses, there's chickweed, there's dandelions, there's all these plants. So in reality, all plants have to have relationships with other plants, as well as with the different animals that pass by, even the soil. Even your houseplant that's living in a pot has a relationship with all the other houseplants in your house and has a relationship with the soil and such. But more importantly than that, when we start to go into these relationships, we realize that there are multiple kinds of relationships. There's what we call commensalisms or mutualisms. And these are just fancy ways of saying, you know, I am in a relationship where I get something out of it and the other person doesn't, for example, or both of us get a net benefit, or even maybe where I get a benefit and another person suffers. And when you start to really study the way plants create these different relationships, you start to understand that all these relationships can be good. Even a parasite can actually be a good thing if it's done in certain ways and for certain amounts of time. I'll give you an example from a human perspective. Parenting.
I was just going
you
right
have
there.
A parasite pretty much for at a minimum 18 years, if not longer, right?
My mind went right there.
And exactly, when we start to sit down and think about them, those are the extremes, and that's the one that's kind of easiest to be okay. But how many of us have also had situations where maybe for a short period of time, a neighbor, a relative, a very good friend has fallen on hard times, and we have chosen to support them, maybe economically, maybe having them move in, having them do these things. That is also a form of parasitism, but it's positive because there's an overarching kind of connection that allows a benefit to happen over time for both of you in different ways. So if I was to look at this from a business perspective, I could look and be like, okay, what are, if you look at the marketing team, right, it has a cost and it has a benefit. So maybe that's mutually beneficial. I'm the department that maybe builds the product, and then I'm the marketing team. Mutually beneficial, two different things, they support each other. But then you have like your customer support, And that in some ways is a parasite to the company, right? They take resources all the time and they produce. So when you start to understand the relationships plants have, you start to understand how you could better optimize them. How long should they last before they should be revised? How can they be done in the optimal way? You start to understand that all these types of relationships, even those that we have in our, even competition, from a natural perspective, competition exists, but it's actually much, much less than you think. We tend to think that competition makes the world go round, and it's actually not true. On a natural, from a nature's perspective, it's actually mutualisms that make the world go round with selective competition in order to create those crises that we need to enhance and introduce new opportunities. So when we start to look at this, we start to realize that whether it's in our own personal relationships, like our friends, so not everybody who takes from me is bad or wrong. It depends on the circumstances. And it gives me the opportunity to recognize that all of this could be natural if I take a step back and I look at it. Now, that doesn't mean you should let somebody like walk all over you. That's not the point. But the point is to understand, is this a temporary situation, for example? Is this a situation that has a series of parameters like you would see in nature? Okay, then this is good. And when those parameters change, I need to change the relationship. So it helps us better assess what's happening, to take away that judgment and that fear that we have been taught, and to look at something for what it really is, taking the approach that if I start with the idea that this could be healthy if done in a healthy way, what would a healthy way of a parasitism or competition or commensalism or all these other terms that I'm not going to go into too in detail, but what do those look like in a healthy relationship? And it helps us just reshift. Sometimes a little bit it's our minds, sometimes it's a little bit behavior, sometimes it's a little bit of both.
And that often the crisis is really necessary for us to say, okay, something has to change.
Exactly.
We get in our comfort zone and we think everything's wonderful in that comfort zone, but we don't grow, we don't develop, we don't evolve.
Exactly. And that's why, like I said, from a nature perspective, you have these two, let's say two plants that are growing right next to each other and they're doing really well and all this happens. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, the amount of pollinators come out like lowers because of something else. And these two go into competition, but that competition might push one of them to change the pollinator that's being attracted. So that competition creates the opportunity for, rather than them two competing for the same pollinator, one of them to go for a different pollinator and the other one to stay with the pollinator that current's there. So it helps us understand that done in the right way and not done to the death, but done in order to instill a change, a competitive environment can be positive, but competition can't last long-term because long-term competition kills. So it helps us understand that some of the rules we have created in our world and some of the understandings that we have, like Darwin never said survival of the fittest. Darwin said survival of the fit, who was fit enough to stay, but that doesn't mean taking anybody else down. It means I'm doing well enough to survive. Hey, help, come on, you too, come to the level to survive too, to do well so that we can all thrive. Not I'm going to thrive and you're going to go down.
Exactly. Awesome. So how can plants help me discover what my purpose is?
And this is a place where we start to move into a few different things. We know that plants work, and whether we're talking about looking out into a landscape where, of course, 85% of the mass of the planet is plants, or whether I'm even just looking at, again, the plants that are sitting on my windowsill, plants evoke a sense of awe and wonder. The natural world in general triggers something that even from a scientific perspective is called awe. And awe triggers a whole set of chemical reactions. So I could go very spiritual on this topic and I can go very secular scientific on this topic. Both of them honestly get us to the same place. From a spiritual perspective, the relationship with another being, with a plant, that really helps us enter into a new way of thinking, a new logic, triggers my opportunity to see myself outside of the way that society, that human society has sort of labeled me. It allows me to enter into parts of myself. They have this, their unique way of thinking, of being, of existing, and yet part of the natural world of which I am a part of, helps me see myself as a mirror and gives me this permission to explore this untapped part of myself that comes from a different way of thinking. From a scientific perspective, we can say that awe triggers a whole set of chemical reactions in us that allows us and permits us to see the world with more enthusiasm, with more optimism. We're more altruistic even when we're in nature. And this chemical reaction then allows me to connect into parts of myself that I might struggle with doing when I'm only in a logical, action-based mentality, which is mainly how we are. So the awe gives us this serotonin dump. It decreases cortisol levels. It allows us to feel less stress. And in those moments of less stress, we're able to then slow down. And in that slowing down, now I flood my body with a whole series of chemicals that come from also the air and the relationship with plants that enhance my wellness and my well-being. And there you have a clearer mind to then explore some big topics such as your purpose. So whether you're going at it because I'm connecting into plants, I'm communicating with plants, I'm listening to their logic and I'm allowing myself to see my logic in a different way, or whether it's my chemical body that is reaction and lowering my stress levels and in opening my awareness and allowing me to see the world with greater clarity and to therefore see myself with greater clarity. It doesn't matter because you're going to get to this point, which is the fact that I feel better about myself. I feel better about the world around me, and I can see things. Yes, I also see the bad things that are happening, but I don't look at them as catastrophes. I see them as an opportunity, and I start to then understand or explore more clearly what is my role in what is happening. What is my purpose, or how am I supposed to interact with what is happening, looking at it not as an adversarial relationship, but instead as the idea of how do I create an ecosystem in which I am a part of this planet, or I am a part of whatever ecosystem is around me, and I am part of that system. So what actions I take will trigger what happens in that ecosystem, and vice versa. And those are those steps that we start to take towards getting to what is our purpose? What is our mission? What are we here to accomplish?
I think it also ties to accountability awareness.
Absolutely, because that relationship with the planet, and this is why that vitamin N, sort of that vitamin nature piece is so important. It reminds us that we are part of the planet, and therefore you don't have to have an external accountability. Your accountability is to yourself, because as you move forward and you do things, you realize that the consequences always come back to you because you're a part of the greater system.
Wow. This is really very interesting. Love this. We are at the point now where I just do some rapid fire questions, which are just, excuse me, a phrase or a word, just top of your mind, whatever comes, answering in it, just real short answer. So the plants of choice inside your home would be?
The plants of choice, the ones that are here, spider plants. So the spider plant's a big one, Noel the Christmas cactus, peace lily, and of course the gardenia. Well, there's actually a gardenia also outside, but the gardenia.
I have a gardenia outside too.
Yay!
And I have cactuses. I have plants in front of my computer too, so it's so funny. And I do, I keep plants in my house because it does make me feel better. And I love caring for them as if they were my children that are no longer in the house.
Absolutely. I know that feeling.
All right. Best lesson you've learned so far?
Ooh, best lesson I've learned so far. I would say that my best lesson I've learned so far is to give myself permission to think outside the box. Not think outside the box as in like, I must not think like others, but more of like, whatever the thinking that's coming to me right now, no matter how crazy it might be, it might seem, write it down, get it, look at it, give yourself time to receive it. So, and then separate from the receiving part, give yourself then some time to kind of forget that you received it and then go back and look at it and analyze it and understand it. So it's that permission to receive whatever might come, no matter how ridiculous you might sound, to be the one that stands up in a meeting and says, hey, you just said this and it triggered the idea of, I don't know, we should make red cornflakes and have them served to all the children that are, it might seem silly, but then the person might be like, hey, are you sure you meant this? But what about this, 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 and this? And then all of a sudden it comes. Yeah. So really allowing that craziness or that unusualness to come in and then giving it time to just settle and then going and analyzing it along with others.
Definitely a good tactic for brainstorming for meetings.
Yeah.
Which people have a hard time with that. What legacy would you like to leave?
My legacy that I would want to leave is really that each person discovers their inner plantness, the ability for you to connect and remember and not remember, to live and embody the fact that we have 3 ways to interact with nature. We can experience nature, we can look at it, we can be nature, and we can also participate in nature. Mm-hmm. So the reminder that my experiences in nature are mirrors of what is inside of myself. And therefore always remembering that I am nature.
Very good. One of the things that you talk about in your bio that we didn't discuss is BAM Foundation. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about BAM Foundation.
So the BAM Foundation is a foundation for basically civic bio-inspired living. And it's a wonderful organization that I feel so proud to be a part of, because it is really the idea that in order for us to be socially responsible, we have to reconnect to our biological, to our physical ways of being, to nature in so many aspects. And this is at 360 degrees. So the idea of civic responsibility being more than just politics in a vacuum, or the idea of bio-inspired innovation being just products and design, but the idea that we need to relook at organic ways of living our lives, natural ways of living our lives. Now, that doesn't mean everybody needs to go out to the countryside and become a farmer. I'm not advocating that. And the contrary, in my favorite things is seeing how nature can inspire our cities, the whole nature inspired city, the city that really you feel completely connected to. And there's so much, it's a whole other podcast episode where we can talk about that. Yes. And so BAM is really helping us understand that civic responsibility and that bio-inspired innovation are 2 things that are one of 2 sides of the same coin, and that we really need to go back to our natural roots to then build out societies of the future that help us feel connected rather than disconnected.
Yeah, definitely. The next, and actually the last one, favorite spot to renew and refresh.
Favorite spot to renew and refresh. That's a hard one because I live in kind of a little bit of a paradise for that. My favorite spot to renew and refresh probably right now is I have a deep, deep, deep love for grasses. Believe it or not, I love grass. So I feel completely renewed lying in an open field filled with wild grasses. Like, it's just this feeling. If I ever see, I live right now, I have a huge meadow in front of me leading to a river, and there's a gorgeous tree, Gary, the silver fir. But when I go outside, I will say hello to Gary and then bypass Gary probably, and just go out and lie in the field only after the cows have been gone for at least a month. because the
Yeah.
cows love these fields just as much as I do. This is pasture for them. but once they're gone for more than a month, then I love it. And I love all the wildflowers that come up, and just lying on the grass and seeing how grass is never, it's very strange unless you're talking about a lawn, which is not to me the same. But you don't see one type of grass. You see always so many different kinds of plants inside grass. You see dandelions and chickweed, and you see, you know, purslane, and you see all the wild variations of garlic and of all these other kinds of plants that just spontaneously come up, all the different types of flowers and such. And there's something about lying with them, immersed in this environment and feeling like my whole body is sort of held by the earth, that for me just instantly recharges me.
And again, it takes you back to your childhood when you naturally would lay in the grass and just look up at the stars, the clouds.
Exactly. And if I have a canopy of trees above me, even better. Like just looking up at the sky through the canopy of trees.
One of my favorite things to do. Absolutely. Awesome.
So wonderful.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Cute story before we end. My mom grew up on a farm, and she had a cow, and they had, the fields, and they had garlic in those fields naturally growing. And the cow loved garlic, and they couldn't use the milk because it tasted like garlic.
Garlic milk. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. Now you make me wonder. I should go ask the farmers down there, because they have there's one period of the year, we're kind of at the end of that tail of that season, where all the wild garlic comes up. I wonder if those cows get loose into the wild garlic.
I don't know.
Now I'm curious.
That was
maybe that's how you make garlicky
story.
Cheese.
Maybe. I don't know, but that's the story they always told us. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm sure you all that are listening have been fascinated and want to know more about how to get in touch with Tigrilla. And so I'm going to share her contact information, and she'll talk a little bit about the gift she has. And for those of you that are just listening to the audio, I will take the time to read at least her email address so that you can get in touch with her. But it is includes also her Facebook and her Instagram and LinkedIn. The email address is tigrilla at tigrillagardenia.com. So her first name at her first and last name.com. Very easy.
I try to make it easy.
Yes. And the website is also very easy. It's her first and last name.com. So www.tigrillagardenia.com. And the book that you see here is just how I want to promote the fact that I have a book that came out, and I'm one of 21 authors. But if we can just go back, and if you just want to take a moment to talk about your gift of discover your spring wild plants.
Yeah, so this is a quiz to find who your wild. So we talk so much about spirit animals, but we don't really talk about spirit plants, and especially wild plants. Some people call them weeds. I call them wild plants. And so this allows you to go through a short quiz, which will help you identify your spirit wild plant. What is the wild plant? So dandelion or cattails, also called bulrush. Like, what is the wild plant that in this moment wants to have a relationship with you and wants to help you develop your relationship with plants? So it's a wonderful quiz. It'll give you an answer. It'll help you understand why. It'll give you some meditation and some other parts. And I also have up on Insight Timer the ability for you to go on a deeper meditation with these plants.
Very cool. So if you want to get her quiz, you would go to https:// again, first and last name, tigrillagardenia.com/what's WHAT-S-YOUR SPIRIT-WILD-PLANT. So what's your spirit wild plant? Excellent. So it has been such a pleasure to talk with you. If you want to get in touch with Tigrilla, please go to her website, first name, last name, and check out all that she has there. Check out her Facebook and LinkedIn sites and Instagram. Take that quiz, take advantage of that. And you can come back to my Facebook page and let me know what you thought of the quiz too. I'd love to hear your comments back about that. But it's been just such a pleasure, and I definitely would love to have you come back and we can talk about all the other things that we didn't have time to discuss today. As always, I appreciate you giving your time to me. And until next time, remember, life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Nettling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nettling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.